This week on the video version of the Business of Tech, new ransomware and MSP-focused bill passes in Pennsylvania, hacker chatter points to positive developments, the tipping point, the majority of workers are now hybrid, tensions in Ukraine are bubbling over into significant cyber issues, and CEO cautious optimism explored. All this and more. Hit those like and subscribe buttons, and here are this week's stories. It seems salespeople at Cisco are pretty upset. Per reporting an insider, a revamp of sales goals has pushed teams to meet higher quotas even as revenue growth has slowed. This is causing departures in the sales team, with at least 12 in enterprise sales having left in the past year, per employees' LinkedIn pages. In a statement to Insider, a Cisco spokesperson said the company had consistently updated its compensation structure in alignment with industry best practices to stay competitive. VCs too seem to be having problems with compensation. Again from Insider, while compensation is at record levels within the space, 20% higher bonuses in 2021 than 2020, most junior members have to wait to see their cut. This is due to the payout structure, which happens later, typically for as long as 8 years before their shares invest. Why do we care? In the context of the more significant problem of retaining and acquiring employees, looking at compensation as a piece of the overall picture is timely. As observed on other episodes, the data points to compensation is not necessarily the number one reason for retaining employees, but it is up there. Salespeople, in particular, are pretty sensitive to pay-related changes in their overall compensation. Be very aware. In Pennsylvania, the Senate has passed Senate Bill 726, which prohibits state and local governments from using taxpayer money to pay ransoms. The bill defines ransomware and requires managed services providers to notify the proper official in a state agency within an hour of a ransomware discovery. A declaration of disaster emergency allows for an exception to the ban on payment. In the UK too, a focus on MSPs. The UK government proposes ramping up fines on MSPs who don't implement adequate cybersecurity measures. As part of its £2.6 billion National Cyber Strategy 2022, the government says new laws are needed to drive up security standards in outsourced IT services used by almost all UK businesses. If the measure moves ahead, MSPs will have to comply with the same regulations as other industries, which could lead up to fines of £17 million. The proposal is in a 3-month comment period. CISA Director Jen Easterly told city officials to make cybersecurity a kitchen table issue. Quote, "Cyber threats, ransomware, and have become kitchen table for all of us," she said. "People don't necessarily like to think about it because nobody wants to get attacked. My hope with all of you is to make cybersecurity a kitchen table issue." Why do we care? Managed services providers are explicitly named in the bill and given specific direction, and that's 1 hour for notification. Add Pennsylvania to the list of states with MSP-specific regulations. About a year or two ago, I discussed the idea that politicians would see protecting business as a political winner. That feels more and more obvious now. With a call to the local government to add security to the kitchen table list, we'll see what uptake is, but be forewarned. A New Jersey court has ruled in favor of Merck in a lawsuit the pharmaceutical company filed against its insurer, Ace American, which declined to cover the losses caused by the NotPetya ransomware attack. Ace American refused to cover the losses, citing that the NotPetya attack was part of Russian hostilities against Ukraine and, as a result, was subject to the standard acts of war exclusion clause that is present in most insurance contracts. In a ruling last month, spotted by Lexology, the New Jersey Superior Court has sided with Merck in its strict interpretation of the acts of war clause. Joseph Brunsman, who focuses on the insurance space, has offered some projections for the insurance market for 2022. Employment practices liability projected to be up 5 to 20%, cyber insurance up 40 to 50% for optimal risks and up 50 to 100% for less optimal risks, and tech E&O up 40 to 50% for optimal risks, up 50 to 100% for less optimal risks. Why do we care? State of play is poor for insurers, which will trickle down to providers and customers. How much can the market bear? Seems insurers think 50 to 100%. Nearly one-third of CIOs plan to spend more time driving business innovations in 2022, according to IDG's 2022 State of the CIO survey. Over half of line of business leaders see the CIO as a strategic advisor who proactively identifies business opportunities, according to the survey. The perception of CIOs as strategic business advisors more than doubled since 2021. Tech leaders will continue to bring in revenue for their organizations in 2022, with 65% of leaders adding some form of revenue generation to their objectives for the year. That from CIO Dive. How about a view of the cloud and data center market? According to a data center report from UK-based global real estate and infrastructure consultancy Turner & Townsend, 95% of respondents predict data center construction demand in 2022 will be greater than 2021. 82% of respondents rate data center construction market conditions as hot or overheating. 70% of respondents consider the data center industry to be recession-proof. Now, why do we care? The data center real estate data is a solid proxy for cloud growth. Unsurprising and notable. The build will continue. Revenue generation as a specific goal for tech leaders is my notable headline, however. It's one thing to simply advise on technology, and another to be directly linked to revenue. Sure, the perspective here is internal, but for those preaching virtual CIO services, they'd better link to revenue. Particularly for those who are looking at mid-market organizations, if your internal sponsor is all about the revenue, you had better be too. Bit of good news in the security space. Ransomware attacks dropped 37% in December per the NCC Group's Strategic Threat Intelligence team. This is thought to be seasonal, and in fact due to the hackers taking time off at the holidays too. Also good news, ZDNet is reporting that a new level of paranoia is hitting ransomware operators as evidenced in communications on forums. The recent arrests in Russia have caused a sentiment change. Quote, "This is a big change. I have no desire to go to jail," wrote one forum member. Quote, "In fact, one thing is clear, those who expect that the state will protect them will be greatly disappointed," said another. Of course, that hasn't stopped all of them. The FBI is warning about the Diavol ransomware connected to the TrickBot group. The FBI is warning about extortion demands up to $500,000. Survey data from Hitachi shows insiders are increasingly an attack vector, with a 17% rise in the number of employees offered money to aid in ransomware attacks against their employer. Most specifically, 65% of the survey respondents say that they or their employees were approached between December 7, 2021 and January 4, 2022 to help hackers establish initial access. The most common vector? Email and social media. While most offers are less than $500,000, some proposals are above $1 million. And as a data point update, after mentioning insurance rates yesterday, Bleeping Computer reported on the Bloomington School District. Their cyber insurance jumped 334%. In the UK, the National Cybersecurity Centre is releasing a set of Nmap scripts to help scan for unpatched or vulnerable devices. Called Scanning Made Easy, the approved scripts are available via a GitHub project page, and the center is taking submissions from the security community as well. Now, why do we care? I'm going to focus on the fallout from the arrests. Most everything else feels very tactical. If ransomware groups view the arrests as one and done, the pressure will ease off. If the pressure doesn't let up, change is coming. When the risk of arrest goes up and the reward goes down, as states like Pennsylvania make it illegal to pay ransoms, hackers will change. In the US, one of several bills around tech and privacy moved out of the Senate Judiciary Committee. It would prohibit big tech companies from favoring their own services in an anti-competitive way, something smaller tech companies have accused companies like Apple, Google, Amazon, and Meta of doing for years. In the EU, the Digital Services Act also focused on big tech and was signed off on by the European Parliament. This one would focus on illegal content on platforms, and the risk for fines would be up to 6% of global turnover. Now, why do we care? Two laws flowing through the system. And if asked to bet, I'd say the EU one crosses the finish line, but the US one doesn't. Just like GDPR impacted websites globally, there's a reason every website asks you to accept its data policies, we may all be living on an EU-regulated internet. And that's why we care. More bold statements about returning to work, this time from data collected by Atomic Research and sponsored by enterprise video platform Vidyard, finding that a whopping 96% of financial services professionals would give up a percentage of their salaries to work from home permanently. And so much for the myth of productivity, as 88% of financial services professionals who worked from home during the pandemic say they experienced more successes than when they were in the office. 82% think the overall productivity at their organization has increased with team members working from home during the pandemic. 45% say they can better limit the distractions around them while working. 45% report they get more work done in a shorter amount of time while working from home. And we've reached a tipping point. Per data from the Future Forum, 58% of knowledge workers are now hybrid. That's data from November, compared against 46% in May of 2021. 75% of working parents are remote or hybrid, compared to 64% of non-parents, according to the survey. Meanwhile, the survey found that executives are more likely to come into the office. 68% said that hybrid work is now the preferred model over in-office or fully remote work. 78% of those surveyed said they want location flexibility, while 95% said schedule flexibility is important in their current roles and moving forward. Of the executives polled, 41% responded that a significant goal moving forward is to refocus on creating equal working conditions and the ability to share work between remote and in-office employees. And 72% of those dissatisfied with their company's work location rules will leave. Because interestingly, per the Dice Tech Salary Report, 47.8% of tech workers felt they were underpaid, a marginal increase of nearly 2% compared to 2020. That's despite getting more money, too. 61% of technologists received a salary increase last year, up from 52% in 2020. Why do we care? Employees feel pretty good about the hybrid work world, their contributions during remote work, and their value to the organization. It's not universal, as we see in views of parents versus non-parents here, or in previous studies related to age. And executives continue to appear out of touch with their workers. Savvy leaders and managers are ahead of this with their approaches, focusing on the total package, which includes pay, in their approach to workers. In the US, this is the flip side of the right to work movement. Right to work applies to workers too, and when they have the power, they are clearly using it. Did you know Cisco helps managed services providers directly know about the Cisco Partner Program? Focused on helping partners combine managed services expertise and service creation with innovative Cisco technology and proven go-to-market resources. There's a program option for you with provider pricing, MDF and marketing resources, coupled with Cisco's leading technologies including Meraki, Duo, and Umbrella. Learn more with the link right in the show notes. On Monday, President Biden gave an update on the executive order he issued around the right to repair, quoting Vice. In his statements, Biden said that he was pleased to see the Federal Trade Commission unanimously announce that it would ramp up enforcement against illegal repair restrictions. He also took credit for recent moves from Amazon and Microsoft that will, in theory, make it easier for people to gain access to repair parts and manuals for their devices. Quote, folks will be able to repair their phones and laptops themselves, although I'm not sure I know how to do that. Whenever I have a problem with my phone, I call my daughter. But it's going to make it easy for millions of Americans to repair their electronics instead of paying an arm and a leg to repair or just throwing a device out. End quote. Also from the White House, on Tuesday, news from the Commerce Secretary regarding the chip shortage. We have a while to go. Per the Washington Post, manufacturers and other buyers of computer chips had less than 5 days' supply of some chips on hand late last year, leaving them vulnerable to any disruptions in deliveries. Median demand for chips among buyers that responded to the survey was as much as 17% higher in 2021 than in 2019. The Secretary's statement, quote, we aren't even close to being out of the woods. The House introduced a bill to try and help, earmarking $52 billion to encourage semiconductor production in the U.S. and $45 billion for grants and loans focused on the supply chain, and the Senate already passed a similar bill back in June. Why do we care? Right to repair has crossed the tipping point, and I expect both consumers and customers to expect more. This should be excellent news for those in service. Couple that with some bad news. The chip shortage will go a while. The short-term impact here is to consider ordering times and what's required to make projects a reality when it comes to hardware. Expect project delays to be 2022's theme. Long-term, will this change buying habits? Will customers become used to the idea of a delay in ordering? The example often cited is cars, where consumers may become comfortable ordering and waiting for their new vehicle. Will that extend to other kinds of technology as well? The standoff in Ukraine is causing several security-related ripples. First, the Department of Homeland Security has warned that the U.S. response to a possible Russian invasion could result in a cyber attack launched against the U.S. by the Russian government or its proxies. This is more than simply any background noise of constant threat, but instead a point of leverage the Russian government may use in relations with the rest of the world. And it's becoming clear that cyber activists, who are opposed to the president of Belarus, are hacking the state-run railways computer system and threatening to paralyze trains moving Russian troops and artillery to the country for a potential attack on Ukraine. The goal, quote, indirectly affect Russian troops' movements. Per deep dive review by Cyberscoop, it's unclear how successful the group has been, although the group itself claims success. Bloomberg Law is reporting concern over the ability of the U.S. government to respond by the delayed deployment of a planned board to review significant incidents and make security recommendations. The Cyber Safety Review Board is modeled after the existing National Transportation Safety Board, which investigates plane crashes and other transportation accidents, and was directed in last year's executive order. The Cyber Board is charged with examining incidents and drawing lessons to inform U.S. government policies and practices, and it hasn't launched yet. NBC News highlights a new ransomware tactic, hackers calling those whose data have been compromised. An example is parents of a hacked Dallas school system who were threatened to have their data exposed after the district was breached. Breaches overall are even higher. The 2021 Annual Data Breach Report, published by the Identity Theft Resource Center on Monday, says the overall number of data compromises is up more than 68% compared to 2020. Out of the 1,862 compromises, 1,600 of those were cyber attacks. NIST has issued its newest and final copy for assessing internal IT security. The document, Assessing Security and Privacy Controls in Information Systems and Organizations, focuses on helping entities manage cybersecurity risks across their networks. Guidelines included in the final draft emphasize improving organizational assessments of current cybersecurity infrastructure, promoting better cybersecurity awareness among users, enabling cost-effective security assessment procedures and privacy controls, and creating reliable security information for executives. Why do we care? Cybersecurity earlier in the week was a kitchen table issue as pushed by CISA, but today the news is a lot more nation-state. The prediction of a G20 nation retaliating to cyber with physical attacks is playing out in inverse already, physical attacks resulting in cyber ones. It's happening in Belarus, and the DHS is clearly warning Americans it may happen in the US. That's why we care. Anyone in the critical infrastructure of any kind had better be on high alert right now. Google has ended its support of FLoC as a replacement for cookies in internet advertising and has announced a new proposal, Topics, quoting TechCrunch. The idea here is that your browser will learn about your interests as you move around the web. It'll keep data for the last 3 weeks of your browsing history, and as of now, Google is restricting the number of topics to 300, with plans to extend this over time. Google notes that these topics will not include any sensitive categories like gender or race. To figure out your interests, Google categorizes the sites you visit based on one of these 300 topics. For sites that it hasn't categorized before, a lightweight machine learning algorithm in the browser will take over and provide an estimated topic based on the name of the domain. When you hit upon a site that supports the Topics API for ad purposes, the browser will share 3 topics you are interested in, one for each of the 3 last weeks, selected randomly from your top 5 topics of each week. The site can then share this with its advertising partners to decide which ads to show you. Why do we care? I don't often talk about marketing efforts on the show. Still, with digital marketing likely a lead component for most businesses, particularly small ones, proposed changes like this are a big deal. The end of the cookie and Apple's push for privacy on their devices is sending digital marketers scrambling. And with really only 2 options for digital ads, Google and Meta, these alternative plans matter. Google couldn't get FLoC off the ground. Tracking the topics play, we'll see how digital advertising is done in the not-too-distant future. Executives remain cautiously optimistic for 2022. Per a Fortune Deloitte survey, CEOs have expressed cautious optimism that their organizations have adjusted and adapted to the challenges faced in 2021, including the lingering pandemic. Highlights per ZDNet. About 2/3 of CEOs expect their company's growth to either be very strong or strong in 2022. 36% of CEOs have expressed greater concerns over inflation and the potential for unstable financial markets as reasons that could disrupt their business strategy for this year. 78% of CEOs attribute increased business costs and margin impact to supply chain disruptions in 2021, while 45% said the supply chain had caused revenue losses and customer service issues. Slightly less than half of the CEOs surveyed see the lack of hiring talent, staff, as the biggest challenge they face. 60% expect pandemic business effects to diminish this year, 20% say this summer, 40% say by the end of the year. Nearly 1/3 don't see the end in sight, at least not for the foreseeable future. Now, why do we care? I'd be remiss if I didn't observe that executives were notably out of sync with their employees over several factors in stories earlier this week, so I'm pretty skeptical of their perception of hiring problems. I believe the problem is worse than they think. Cautious optimism is a funny phrase. It's trying to be both positive and negative at the same time. That's my takeaway here. It can be both simultaneously. A pair of retail-related stories. First, from Forrester, 72% of retail sales are still expected to take place in brick-and-mortar stores in 2024. But the retail world is preparing for more technology and fewer humans in those transactions. That includes buy online, pick up in store, buy online, return in store, as well as reserve online, pickup in store, and cashierless technologies. And with that, Bloomberg is reporting that iPhones may soon accept payments without extra hardware. Now, why do we care? Any provider dealing with retail-focused solutions will care about these moves here. The trend in retail away from using people and towards automation is part of the more significant trend to automation. That Apple RMM type offering covered previously, it's focused on point of sale. Apple has big designs on the point of sale and payment processing space and will be a factor in these solutions. That's the way to see these moves. They'll get SMB focused management as a byproduct, but the focus is point of sale and payment processing. Today I want to update on two previous threads. First, revisiting the company providing facial recognition to the IRS, ID.me. In a LinkedIn post Wednesday, the CEO, Blake Hall, explained they do use a powerful facial recognition technology. The company does use a technique known as one-to-many face matching, in which a target face is compared against a database of other known faces to find possible matches. This is a reversal of a previous statement. Additionally, the company has confirmed that they use Amazon's recognition technology. And updating on Log4Shell, Sophos has released research indicating that mass vulnerability exploitation has failed to occur. And the reason is the attention given by security professionals. While initially there were a large number of scans looking for the vulnerability, from late December through January 2022, the attack attempts have flattened out and declined. Researchers observe that this is not a case of overhyping the problem, but instead one where the industry reacted and patched. Why do we care? Consumers have a right to be skeptical, mainly when companies are comfortable being unclear about the types of technology used. Will facial recognition for taxes fly? I'm a bit skeptical. Now, on to the good news. The security community appears to have moved fast enough to handle a good portion of Log4Shell. They did so because of the size of the issue. It does prove it's possible, however. Now the key is making it systemized rather than a fire drill when required. Thanks for tuning in to This Week in the Business of Tech. Shows come out each week, pulling together the daily podcast. If you like this show, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. The content here is possible because of supporters like you. If you want access to shows early, answers to your questions, and private interactions, join our Patreon. It's pay what you want. You decide what the content is worth. Join at patreon.com/MSPradio. Patreons also get access to the written versions of every story as they come out. If you want the stories right away, you can get them on the daily podcast. Find The Business of Tech on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your shows. Subscribe links at businessof.tech, and I'll talk to you again next week.